I wanted to make this video as a public service after struggling with this for days. This is everything involved to put 6th generation Corvette seats in a GM A-body. It's much more complicated than it needs to be. I'm sorry this isn't edited and everything is a mess, but these are seats specifically out of, I believe, an 09 3LT car. And what I'm going to focus on, if you're looking at buying these seats used, this is going to apply to C6 and C7, is there are several levels of Corvettes. Do your research. Don't assume what the seller says is correct. You're talking 1LT, 2LT, 3LT, 4LT. Typically 3LT, 4LT are going to have memory and they're going to have every function. If you want a simple swap, that's the memory module right there. If you want a simple swap, you should look for a 1LT car. That's just going to have power. It's not going to have memory. It's not going to have lumbar. But these are 3LT seats. So I'm going to look at the seats here for a minute before I actually go into the mounting in my car itself. So on the right, we have a passenger seat. Everything works. The biggest difference between passenger and driver on a 3LT car, or 4LT as well, is you're going to have this memory module under the seat. This is the harness taken out. The seat goes there under the lumbar bag that you can see. This memory module needs a CAN bus signal from the Corvette's body control module computer to work. I'm not going to say it can't be made to work, but ideally it would not be there. All the plugs on the seat itself for the connectors are the same, so it is possible to put a non-memory harness in that driver's seat. On the passenger seat, I have everything working. I have, and I'm running it off an M18 Milwaukee battery, but I have up, I have down, forward and back. I have front up, front down, rear up, rear down. Lumbar I'm going to try, and you might be able to hear the bag running. That works. And then power bolster as well. You can probably hear the bag whooshing right there. I also have the heat on right now. Heat is kind of tough to diagnose if it's working, because all you can really do is put your hand in here. Unless you have a big car battery, it's not going to be very hot. But I'm going to go into everything I did on the harness itself to make this work. So this is your main harness that went to the rest of the car on the Corvette. A lot of guides online will talk about taking apart this harness, going to the connectors themselves, going straight into your little heater module or your control module. You don't need to do that because everything that goes to those enters through this main harness, which I have really badly botched together right now. So let's go look at some wires I've taken off. The reason I'm eliminating the harness is because it's too big to be under the seat in the A-body. But I'm going to switch gears over to a diagram which helped me. Into that black harness, which is called C382. You should be able to Google this. These are all the connections. Your big ones you need as far as power to make it work is going to be your A4 pin, which is a large red and white, and your A6 pin, which also is in large red and white. Those are your main power for the seat motor back and forth, and then the heater and all that stuff. However, just hooking those up will not work by itself, which is kind of frustrating. Obviously, you need your A5 black, your ground. When you get the large A4 hooked up, the forward and back will work. So if that's all you want out of the seat, that's cool. You don't need key on, you don't need anything. Obviously, it should be on a relay. I think it's rated for 30 amps from the factory. But that's all you need. To get everything else going, you're going to need a combination of wires. So to get lumbar and bolster to work, you're going to need to basically fire the little relays that are inside those control boxes under the seat. So to do that, I needed a combination of all of the pink, not all of the pink wires, but several of the pink wires wired to hot. So A1 pink needs to be to key on. I have all these bound together right now. A7 occupant sensor serial data. That's basically someone is sitting in the seat. Needs to go to key on. Let me see from memory. B3, which fires up the B side of the harness, needs to go to key on. And let me think of the last one. B8, passenger airbag off indicator control, needs to go to key on. Because the airbag harness is not hooked up in a swap situation, it's a separate plug. You need to trick the seat into disarming it for those modules to come on, in my experience. Now, if you Google this information, you're going to get a Corvette forum post with a lot of diagrams. They are helpful, but they are not very helpful in explaining how to get everything going. I mean, obviously, most of these guys have only worked on the seat in their own Corvette, so they're just going to tell you you need to hook up the red and white because that's what the diagram says. That's how you get hard power to them, but it's not how you make any of it work. So the next item is, and I'll cover how I've got this going on the seat again. I know it's hard to see. But inside my temporary wire nut, I have all those pinks connected right now, so they're all going. As far as the seat heater, that's its own deal. So the seat heater on the Corvette is going to have a gray wire here, which is on that diagram over there. I'll probably switch back to. That's the inhibit signal from the factory HVAC. You don't need that. But then there's a number of wires that need to be connected to actually fire it up. So we'll go back to the diagram again, but you're going to have to basically make a dummy version of the factory on-off two-way switch, or three-way. It has high and low and off, obviously, to get the heater fired. So to get the heater fired, and I did follow this diagram for that. It's a little confusing because coming into the factory switch, which is this unit here on top, you have gray and white for illumination. You have a dark blue out for a high signal, a brown and white for a low signal, light blue for off, and pink and black for high-low. And then additionally, coming into the heater module as well, you have a dark blue. So rather than focus on all that, that's kind of confusing. I had to use a combination of powering up the passenger heated switch off signal on, which seems to be contradictory, but feeding that 12 volt, I guess, lets it know the switch is not off. And then the high-low, which is a pink with black, you're going to have to connect that to connect this circuit. That is labeled as B1, the high-low seat signal. That needs to be on. And then your actual, whichever you want of your high or low, or no, let me make sure I got this right. Your combination of either your high for your dark blue and white in or your brown and white in. Of the two, if I have to pick high or low, I went with the high heat. There is a resistor in here, from what I understand. If the seat gets too hot, it will turn off on its own. So once again, you need your pink and black, your light blue, and then one of your two big trigger wires, all, they're not big, I mean, as far as temperature settings, all wired in at the same time together. They share the black ground, the large black ground, with the rest of the seat. So I have that also going to my Milwaukee battery. Obviously, the Corvette is plastic body, so it can't ground to the body. It runs out to a shared stud. When I put the seats in the car, I think I might just do a ground stud on the side of the rail, because on a metal car, that should work for a ground. I've left the heater hooked up for some time now, and I can feel it. It's just not, I'm not sure how it goes about pulling amperage out of the Milwaukee battery, but it's just not super hot. I'm sure when it's hooked up to a regular battery, it will be hotter. So as far as the car itself, this is a kind of cramped view, but this is a 71 Grand Sport. It's going to be, should be the same on all GMA bodies. I followed dimensions online to add, this is a bench seat car, to add the factory bucket pickups. Those are available everywhere. These are the AMD kit, but basically you have your, your left one on the driver's side, or your far right one on the passenger side is 6 3/4 inch off the seam seal. That's kind of your best starting measurement. And then you're going to be able to get dimensions online, how far over to make the passenger piece. From there, the driver's front left corner of the Corvette seat, or the passenger front right corner, basically lands on that front left pickup in a very good position. So if you just take the seat as it is stock and drop it onto that front left one, it's very close to center under the wheel. So from there, the front right position landed basically off to the side of that stud, and just had to be cut and moved in. The rear is more difficult. So in the rear, I used 1x1 square stock. My friend Chad helped me as well to run out and make extensions. On the inner side, there's normally a stud from the factory, comes up right here. It hit the rail underneath the Corvette seat, so your options are to either trim the stud a little bit or switch it to a bolt from underneath. The only other barrier to putting the seat in, and I mean, you could just run them as they are, I guess, if you really want to, but when they are installed in the Corvette, there's a big drop down in the front, and yes, I haven't cleaned up these welds yet, but in the Corvette, this bracket is probably at least 2 inches longer, and that gives them a propped up angle, where when you set an angle finder on it front to back, it's almost 30 degrees as it goes into the A body. So we put them in place and sat in them and kind of compared some newer cars, and then cut the bracket down more or less as low as it would go, to get them back to a more sane angle. Of course, you also have your seat up and down adjustment, but we did it in a neutral position. Your other option would be to raise the back, which are your pedestals down there. I opted not to do that. There's some lift provided by the 1x1 extensions, but any amount you raise those, you're going to give up headroom, and I need all the headroom I can get. Your only other barrier, once you got your wiring down and your mounts made, this connector drags. The lumbar bag gets zip tied back onto here and here, so it's okay. I have put them both in there and run them forward and back only before I decided to tackle all the other wiring, and it's all good. Just this connector snags and drags underneath, because the A body, or any older Jam, doesn't really have like a trough underneath the seat for that pigtail to go. So of course you've got your factory front to rear harness in there, and that's probably where I'll run wires for relays to the back, because I have my battery back there. But I'm going to do a much smaller kind of Deutsch style connector up underneath the seat that's zip tied out of the way, so it won't drag when the seat goes back and forth. I hope that helps someone. Please feel free to comment with questions. I'll try to answer them. I'm sorry I don't have diagrams and stuff edited in, but I've spent days on this, and the information online going into cars other than, say, a C5 where you could just clip everything in was not all there.